Okay, hello and welcome to the very definition of intimate venues right now. A suitably cosmic location here in Bristol for the last of the Bristol dates of the Red Bull Music Academy tour. Suitably cosmic place, as I say, for the leader of the Cosmic Echoes and very much more, Mr. Lonnie Liston-Smith. More cosmic coincidences. Bristol, you said before, Harvey's Bristol Cream is one of your favourite drinks, so that's a good thing.
That is amazing. I mean, I forget, where did we work before?
Colston Hall you played.
Colston Hall, and then they took us to a restaurant, but before the restaurant, that was the original place they used to make the Harvey's Bristol Cream. And you know, when you perform, you send a rider, say, I need this, I need that. And on my rider is, I need a bottle of Harvey's Bristol Cream. Out of just a little bit of it. And it was amazing.
Keeping with that kind of Bristol cosmic connection again, one of Bristol's favourite sons, musical favourite sons, Ronnie Size, sampled Lonnie Liston-Smith on a track called Shadows. Well, the track he sampled was called Shadows. The track was a Brown Paper Bag, which came out on the label of my other guest today, Mr. Giles Peterson.
As it goes.
Good, it's good to have you here today. It's good to have both of you here. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to...
I was going to make a little comment, sorry. I was going to say that it wasn't Brown Paper Bag, Shadows. It was on the track called It's a Jazz Thing, which came out on...
I just said Brown Paper Bag, didn't I?
Yeah. Now, come on, man.
I've been confusing those all day. I've been getting jazz in my head. I've been going the wrong way around. Thank you for pointing that out.
We've got to start off on the positive.
We've got to start on the right foot. You have to point that out to me.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Giles, I think. Do you know what? I've actually written Jazz Thing as well, so I don't even know why I said that. But anyway, we'll move on from that. We will be having a chat where Giles will be correcting me at each turn for the next 40 minutes or so, and then there'll be a slight break. The lights will go out, the atmosphere will build, and then we'll hear an exclusive performance for about an hour after a 15-minute break with Lonnie and the band that Giles and himself put together. So, preamble over, I'm going to ask you a couple of things as our main guest tonight. You've played in the UK a few times before. How has outside of the US been a big part of your career?
Yeah, that's a good question because I did the record expansions with 75, and I wanted to put jazz and fusion and funk together. And so I did expansions, and what blew my mind, I mean, it took off in the UK. I mean, it became a monster hit. And I came over, and back then they had these places where kids could go and dance. I don't think they served any alcohol. And I saw little kids, 13, 14, 15, 16 on up, dancing to expansions. And I never forgot that. So that was a really great experience.
Giles, you've, from your pirate radio days to...
By the way, they did serve alcohol at those things.
See how you...
Yeah, they did.
I didn't know.
Just saying. Sorry.
You're just here to be an...
No,
I
can't help
just
it. Come in my way.
We're handing him to you on a plate. Giles, you've been playing... since your first days on the radio to just this week on Six Music, you've been playing Lonnie Liston-Smith's music. Tell me about your own personal relationship with his music, and what was the jump-off point for you?
I think it was expansions because I would have been 9 when that came out, or 10 or something. So I didn't hear it when it came out, but when I started DJing on pirate radio at 15, 16 years old. It was like a classic song. It was the song that everyone had to have in their box. It was like one of the essential tracks. And what was so amazing about it was that it was out of the norm. It was like, I always, it's still now when I listen to it, I'm like, how, this track is just so unique. And it was this incredible kind of, it's where funk and fusion and jazz met, and it felt so good. And we were talking earlier on, like someone like Larry Levan in New York, who was the biggest DJ in the world, influential wise. That was a classic song for him. So it was a song that the DJs just sort of, it was like you made it for us. And it opened the door for more people to take more risks in a way in music. So it was a really, really important song for that. And for me, it got me into jazz, I think. It was one of those key records. A lot of artists of that era, notably yourself and people like George Duke and Roy Ayers, and they were, we don't just walk out and buy a John Coltrane record. You need to go through a doorway that will lead you that way. And so that was one of those incredible records that I'm sure introduced a lot of people to different aspects of music.
Do you ever get bored of talking about expansions, or are you as proud of it as everyone is keen to talk to you about it?
Oh no, I'm really proud of it, because what people don't realize, every musician on that record had never played that way before. I mean, it was amazing. They was stone cold jazz musicians, and actually the bass line, Cecil McBee was playing upright bass, and everyone swore it was a electric bass, but that's Cecil McBee on upright bass, and of course the triangle. Giles is reminding me when I get back home, I got to figure out what musician played the triangle. But it all came together, and we were all jazz musicians from just playing straight ahead jazz. But then I said, well, that's the first time I wrote lyrics, because before that I would listen to the blues and everybody crying the blues, and my baby left me and all that. I said, okay, let me write some lyrics that really will some positive thought behind it, and people can maybe get something out of it, but at the same time they can dance. And so the jazz fusion funk, the jazz is you still can improvise over top the funk and all that. So it worked. Yeah.
And it's got your brother on the vocals.
That's another interesting story. My younger brother, I have two younger brothers, and my father has that beautiful tenor voice, just like Donald, who's on like singing expansion, and Ray. They both inherited my father's tenor voice. So when we used to get together and sing around the house, and I always had to sing the bass part. I couldn't get the tenor, and so when I wrote expansions, I heard my father's voice, and because he sang with the Harmonizing Four, and so I called Donald, but Donald plays piano also and flute. So he said, yeah, okay, I'll sing it, and he sang on it, and it all worked and came together.
You mentioned your father. You mentioned your family life. Your father was a big musician in his own right, and in the Harmonizing Four.
Yeah, Harmonizing Four gospel group. They were well known all over the world. So when I grew up, it was nothing for me to come home from school, and that'd be the Dixie Hummingbirds. I met Sam Cooke when he was with the Soul Stirrers, and people forget those brothers, the Womack brothers. They started out in gospel. They were a gospel group. My father told me about them. So they had gospel festivals, just like we have jazz festivals. So they'd all have a festival in one town, then they go to the next town. And so then I found out later on in life that my father, the Harmonizing Four, were invited to sing at, Eleanor Roosevelt invited them to sing at the White House when President Roosevelt passed. And he was laid back like I am. And so he never really told us. And I found out on the internet. So, but he was a great musician and loved me, and he played the 4-string guitar. So so it was just music from. I tell people, I guess from the time I came out of the womb, it was just all music. So that was the way it was.
And this is in Richmond,
Virginia. Yeah.
And then you went to school you went to university in Baltimore, is that right, to study music?
Oh yeah, went to Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm glad I did, because I was supposed to be heading to New York, but I went there to Morgan State University, and but when I got to Baltimore, that's when I met Gary Bartz, because he lived there, Gary Bartz, and a whole lot of other talented musicians who are famous now. And Gary Bartz's father had a jazz club called the North End Lounge. So we started performing there, and all kinds of musicians came through. Jason was it Moncur, played trombone, and whole lot of different musicians. So we all started in Baltimore. Oh, and then Betty Carter came through town, and she needed some musicians to play behind her. That was a very unique experience. She's a very talented singer, and they call it Betty Bebop Carter. So that was about the strongest woman I had ever been around, and you know, she could sing, and just like the guys play the horns. So that was a good experience.
What was it that took you towards jazz initially?
Oh, in the beginning, I was in high school, and I heard a record over someone's house, and I just couldn't believe it. I said, "What is that?" And it was Charlie Parker playing "Just Friends" with strings. But I never, because I was used to rhythm and blues, gospel, and doo-wop. You know, that was big back then. But then when I heard Charlie Parker, I said, "Well, what is he doing?" They said he's doing improvisation. He said like he was just flying all over the universe, just flying, and no red lights, no nothing. It was just beautiful. And I said, well, I want to learn how to do that. And that was the beginning of learning how to play jazz.
And that jazz education that you got back home, you then kind of packed up your bags and took them to the big city, New York, where...
Oh, yeah, after college, went to New York, and what you do, you start sitting in jam sessions, and then I started working with a lot of singers, Al Hibbler, Joe Williams, Dakota Staten. Just started working with Betty Carter again.
Did you feel that you had to move to New York to kind of further your musical ambitions? You decided at that point that this is what you were intending to do, and New York was the only place to do it?
Back then, you really had to move to New York. I mean, because everything evolved around New York City. And so you get to New York, and then all of a sudden people started hearing you play, and then all of a sudden they'll pass your name around, then you get calls from Rosson Roland Kirk, Art Blakely and the Jazz Messengers, Max Roach. I mean, they all offer you jobs, and you start working with these different groups, and then eventually you end up with Miles Davis, and then after that, everyone working Miles Davis, you end up forming your own group.
You work with the, because you were with the Jazz Messengers briefly, weren't you?
Mm-hmm.
But the first time you recorded, who was that with?
Oh, Rosson Roland Kirk. We did two albums. Here Comes the Whistle Man, and Please Don't Cry, Beautiful Edith. Wow. Okay.
You seen that for a while?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Both classics.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, the interesting point is he played 3 saxophones simultaneously. And I mean, and he had a nose flute, so he'd be playing all this, and then he said, but he was a good musician, so that was it, and it worked.
You mentioned some of the people that you went on to work with. I just wanted to stop on one of them first of all, which was Pharoah Sanders. How did that experience come about? How did you meet Pharoah Sanders?
Well, that's very interesting, because it was a club in New York City called Slugs, and everyone used to go there. And so I went to hear Pharoah, and it sounded like Pharoah was playing more than one note on the saxophone, which they tell you in school you can't do that. But he was doing it, and at that time, I was trying to get more sound. I was only playing Steinway grand pianos or grand pianos. So you have 10 fingers. So then all of a sudden you say, well, I need more sound. So then you do this, but you weren't banging there. You're trying to get more sound. And so Pharoah heard that, and I said, well, how can you play more than one note? He said, well, sure, you getting more sound. He said, so we got together, and then we heard Leon Thomas yodeling. I mean, it was incredible. So we all 3 got together and didn't even have to rehearse that much. It was so organic. We just started performing and playing, and did that first big record, Karma, and it took off, worldwide.
So you got one guy yodeling, one guy playing 2 instruments, and you playing with your elbows.
Oh,
that's jazz.
Okay, I should have told you.
Well, I was going to ask you about the musical process with when you and Pharoah Sanders were working together. It was quite a creative push and pull.
Right, because Pharoah, he was had been with Sun Ra, See, I didn't discover Sun Ra and people like Cecil Taylor until I got to New York City. That was like avant-garde music, where you just improvise and you just stretch out as far as you can go. And so, and Sun, those are familiar with Sun Ra, he would play, but Sun Ra would stay out into the to the cosmos. And so I told Pharaoh, I said, Pharaoh, let's don't leave the people out there. We go out, but let's bring them back, and so it worked. And because when the creator has a master plan, we really stretched out, but then we come back to the melody and everything at the end, and everyone can kind of, calm down. And so, I mean, because, if you listen to the music, leave them out there, they got to go to work the next day, the kids, everything. So.
Giles, as a fan of all kind of jazz, you said at the beginning that one of the main attractions of Lonnie Liston Smith was this kind of fusion. Well, as a fan, what was it like to listen to these out there records for the first time?
Well, the thing is with Lonnie, for the first 10 years of me being a DJ, I didn't know about Pharoah Sanders and people like that. I was just listening to his boogie and his jazz funk records. Because you made like 10 or 11 records, maybe more, on CBS and on Flying Dutchman, and they were like, quite unique Lonnie Liston Smith records that were kind of electric and lots of synths and keyboards and funky and a bit of disco in there. It was perfect for us, soul boys going to Case to Soul weekenders and stuff. And then you basically, it's only in the last 10, 15 years that I kind of look back on your career since there's Wikipedia or whatever, and you go Lonnie Liston Smith, and you go, wow, he did, he played on my favorite Pharoah Sanders album, Jewels of Thought. You played Prince of Peace, Who Am I Like, on that, and then I saw he was on the Roland Kirk, and then Max Roach and Art Blakey, so I saw his history. I was like, oh my God, this totally makes sense, because you made that kind of connection between that very kind of special period in American jazz where it was a little bit free, but it still had a little bit of melody in it. For me, it's the ultimate music. It's funny because a couple of weeks ago I did a show in London with the Strata East All-Stars, which featured Cecil McBee, and they had a record label called Strata East, and there's Strata East Records, there's Black Jazz Records, there was Impulse Records, and there was Flying Dutchman Records, and those labels are all like, they are the ultimate jazz sort of heritage labels for me. And so you are part of that, but you took it and you revolutionized it a little bit, because a lot of some of those musicians, they didn't quite know where to go when electronics came in. You did the Miles Davis bit, but then they kind of got lost in jazz funk or in smooth jazz, whereas with you, there was always an edge. And so that's incredible. So thank you for that, because it's important that you get the props for that.
All right, thank you. Now, when I was working with Miles Davis, that's a really funny story. I mean, because, before I got there, you had Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, Joe Zawinul, and they all played Defender Rose. So I had just discovered Defender Rose. I said, oh, okay. So I got the call. I said, I'm going to play Defender Rose. I can really experiment now. And I get to the first recording, and I'm looking. I don't see anything. And so I said, well, Miles, what am I supposed to do? I can't talk like Miles, because Miles is very frank, which is good. It made you stronger. And So he said, I'm tired of the bleeping Fender Rose, which made sense. I mean, all those excellent keyboardists. So he said, you playing that? I said, well, Miles, what is that? The Japanese had just given him a Yamaha electric organ. He said, I want that sound now. I said, Miles, I've never played one. Good. I said, can I take it home and practice? No. I mean, that's how amazing. He wanted you. He'd get mad if you didn't come up with something different every night. So by me not having one, I had to come up with something different every night, and at the same time learning how to play it. But I saw Miles on his trumpet. He had the wah-wah pedal and all these little instruments. So I said, before I did the expansion, I said, well, let me hook all the same thing that Miles has on his trumpet up to the Fender Rhodes electric piano. And I mean, it really worked. And that's why y'all heard that, I call it, the cosmic sound. And so I got that from watching Miles with his trumpet, so. So it's
You,
great.
you worked on the corner with Miles. Is that
Oh,
right?
right.
It was that album,
Yeah, on the corner, and I think was one other. Yeah.
Charles? Well, while just on the Fender Rhodes, which you may, I mean, you know, that's what you're known for fantastically. So thank you, John. On the corner, this is the credit on the back. But you got into the Fender Rhodes as an instrument when you were working with Pharoah Sanders on the Tembe album. Is that right?
Well, when we went to California, I think the last record I did with Pharoah was called Thimby. We was in California. So before that, I had only played, you know, the grand piano. So when you get to the studio with a grand piano, you have to do anything. But Pharoah has to unpack his horns, and the bassist has to, you know, get his bass together. The drummer has to set up the drums. So I'm just standing there, but I see this instrument in the corner. So I asked the engineer, I said, "What is that?" And he said, "That's the Fender Rhodes electric piano." I said, "Okay." So I just walked over and started messing with it and playing with the knobs. And I mean, this song came to me. I mean, I guess the creator just sent it. And Pharoah, everybody ran over and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just writing this song." They said, "We got to record this right now." They said, "What are you going to call it?" And at that time, I was studying astro projection, and the song sounded like we were just all over the place, floating through the space and the sky. I said, "Let's call it astro traveling." You know, we left our body and we just floating everywhere. And so we called it astro traveling, and I'll play a little bit for you tonight. So, and it turned out to be a 12-bar, I call it a 12-bar 21st century blues. Because, you know, the blues people, and even like people, you know, over here in London, you have a lot of rock musicians. They really study the blues, and I guess like the Rolling Stones, and I forget the other guy. I shot the sheriff. Who was that? Eric Clapton. But they forget that, you know, all the jazz guys, Miles Allen, we all grew up listening to Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters, and so I was so happy when Astro Traveling turned out to be a blues, but it's a cosmic blues.
So what seems to be springing up each time is you being pushed creatively with no time at all, or kind of learning on the job, improvisation, which seems to be like at the heart of a lot of the music up till now. When you started your own band, with having had this, you know, incredible, not even an apprenticeship, as you know, an incredible kind of grounding with these guys. When you were starting your own band, what was the mission statement that you were taking with you from the people that you'd learnt with before?
Well, actually, they made me start my own band because I was with Miles, and Bob Thiel called me and said, "Lonnie, you got to do a record. Everybody's asking about you." I said, "Okay, that's good. I do a record tonight." He said, "Lonnie, Mr. Smith has his own record." So then I go back working with Miles. So then months later, I get a call from Bob Thiel, "Lonnie, you got to put a band together because your record is being released, and, you know, so you're a leader now." I said, "Oh, man, I didn't, you know, I'm not leaving Miles." So I told Miles the story. He just laughed. He got a big kick out of it. He said, "I always want my emotions on my sleeve." So he said, "Why did you do the record then?" I said, "Oh, shoot." So I you know, then I started the group, and being a leader is a big step. Well, see, when you working with someone else, all you gotta do is just be on time, and you know, I know I'm gonna be on time, but when you're a leader of the band, oh man, where's the bass player? Where's the drummer? Oh shoot, some people not on time. So then you gotta learn about business, and that's when music really takes a turn. You know, you balance out creativity or the art of music and business. That's a trip. But you know, the music, you're in love with music, so you have to do what you have to do.
So the band was the Cosmic Echoes, and what were your first few releases?
We did Astro Traveling was the first one. And then we had Cosmic Funk, and then Bob Thiel he said, Lonnie, had a cover in mind. I want to have a upright piano. And he had someone destroy our upright piano, put on. I said, Bob, you can't do that, but he did it. But then that's when Expansions came out. The Expansion was the third one, and everything just took off from there.
You mentioned Bob Thiel a couple of times. Bob Thiel ran the Flying Dutchman label at the time.
Flying Dutchman. He produced all the John Coltrane albums on Impulse. And he goes all the way back to
Gato Barbieri as well, is that right? He produced a couple of things for
Gato Barbieri. He produced all the Farrell's records. He produced Gil Scott-Heron first records about what was the one? But he did. You Will See the Revolution will not be televised. Bob Thiel produced all these records. Was
it really important for you as a kind of creative, expansive musician to have a very thoughtful A&R guy looking after your catalogue? Basically, you need to have someone who's strong enough, but is also going to give you room to breathe.
Yeah, well, the great thing about Bob Thiel, he never got in the way of any musician. He respected the musicianship and artistry of each musician, and because he would tell me stories he did when he was producing John Coltrane one time. And so they decided to do a record with John Coltrane, and Duke Ellington played the whole record on piano. So he said, Duke told him, Bob, they always want you to do more than one track. So he said, so Duke Ellington, John Coltrane, they did the song. So Bob came out of the studio. He said, okay, I want y'all to do another track. So Duke Ellington told him, said, no, because each time it's going to be different anyway, so why? And that's true. And so he tell me stories like that, but he never got in your way. He come up with strange titles, but I said, no, Bob. He said, I want you to call this song Dumpy Mama or something. I said, Bob, that's not cosmic. You can't do that. But it was all fun.
You mentioned reading about astral projections, as you do, as we all do, yeah. I'm sure. Sun Ra obviously had a very big cosmic element to everything he did. Can you just tell me a little bit about what the thinking of the time and trying to get in is, this fascination with space travel and bigger these bigger themes like that, and trying to push that into your own music? Oh yeah,
for some reason in America, I don't know about over here, but in America in the 70s, I don't know, creativity was superb. I mean, I don't know, we were blessed with all these great artists, and there was a bookstore in New York called Wisner's, and they had all books on all religion, all philosophies. So it was nothing to go into the bookstore and you see Sun Ra studying or looking at certain books, John Coltrane, and so I was studying everything, They had Sufism had some great books on music, and then I was going to all these different lectures by the gurus. That was big then. They would come over and Transcendental Meditation, Scientology was a little bit different for me. Theosophical Society, Rosicrucian. I wrote a song, In Search of Truth, and I did a record called Renaissance, and I put every symbol, religious symbol or philosophy symbol, on the inside of the cover, and I was just wondering. I said, well, maybe I can. I thought, you can save the world through music. I'm gonna keep trying, and that's what I meant by expand your mind. Then the next one was, if you expand your mind, you have a vision of a new world. That was the second run. Then you give peace a chance, because all of religion and philosophies were basically saying the same thing. So I'm saying, why are we fighting? But then you keep studying and you find out about business and you say, oh, war is business and greed. So then I just keep playing music.
Did you ever have an issue with the purists? So we've talked a lot about the styles that you're bringing into jazz. Did you ever was it ever a problem or an issue?
Oh, well, you used to have that today. I mean, it's just all music. And, oh, man, when Miles did Bitches Brew, I mean, I know people have been listening to Miles since they were kids. And when he did Bitches Brew, I mean, man, I just thought they were going to just leave the planet. I mean, they really couldn't deal with it. And it still goes on today, but it's all music. That's one thing I like about Europe. When you have festivals, you have all the music represented, blues, jazz, whatever. And and when I was working with Miles, I learned something. I listened to Miles, I said, wow, he's still playing Miles, the same thing, but everything else had changed around him. And that's what he wanted. I mean, because he just wanted to just keep going forward. And so I guess that purist thing is always going to be a conflict.
Charles, you're a big fan of the more disco records that Lonnie came up with later on in the 70s. We were talking about those beforehand.
Like it all his stuff. But it's true, he's one of those artists who've, your phases all make sense at one stage or another. And even the later records after your CBS years, when you went to Dr. Jazz, you discovered Marcus Miller, right?
Oh.
He was 16. I mean, that's
that was when we were with on Columbia, and we were at a jam session. You know, of course, Marcus Miller is big now, but so we was jamming, and I heard this little kid play bass, and I said, wow. 16 had this, he had the hat turned all around and everything. So I said, wow, he sounds good. So then he said, after we jammed, he put the bass down, he said, I got a song for you. So I'm looking at the 16-year-old kid and said, what is he talking about? And so he sat there, he played piano also. He actually plays a whole lot of instruments. And so he sat down and he started to say, doom, 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 only from the rose, doom, doom. I said, what is that? He said, that's Journey into Love. I took him into the studio. I was getting ready to do a record, so I just took him in the studio. Columbia went crazy. You bringing this little 16-year-old kid, blah, blah, blah. So after we recorded a couple of songs, all of a sudden, I noticed Columbia got him in the corner over here. I said, oh, I see. And the rest is history. And he wrote a lot of songs, and he understood exactly what I wanted. And it worked.
I wanted to ask you about, we talked a lot about collaborating with a lot of kind of older musicians, but you've also been, as Charles has pointed out, you've also been a hit with a younger generation, and then another generation discovered you through hip hop, which kind of leads me on to talking about your experience with Guru and Jazzmatazz. How was that? How was that for you? How did that come about?
And that was very interesting because it's just like Giles discovered jazz through expansions and things like that. Now the hip hop artists, and it's right now they're discovering jazz through samples, and and they're really. So we did this record, EMI called. So we're doing this the Jazzmatazz. I said, okay, what is that? They said, well, we want to use a different artist on each song. So the business was handled correctly. So they flew you to New York, the hotel, the whole bit. So I think I did the track called Down the Back Street. And I said, okay, that's good. And MTV back then, and probably still today, they really not into jazz. But we did Jazzmatazz. MTV drove us crazy. Oh man, this is history. Rap meets jazz. So I think they put us on MTV the whole bit. And back when I went on tour with them, Donald Byrd and I went on tour with Guru for I think it was in Europe. In Japan. And it was amazing. Every day we'd be in the record store, Donald Byrd and I, we're getting all the jazz records, and we look up here, all the rappers in the same section. And they're looking for samples, but everyone is discovering jazz through samples now.
How appreciative or how aware of you were you of hip hop up till then, through the 80s?
That's good. Wow.
You were appreciative when you started receiving some royalties coming through,
yeah,
right?
okay. Bob, say, Giles, you something. Okay. Oh yeah, but oh no, but that after Guru, because I started meeting them, they would be hanging out, and so then you start meeting the different rappers, and so a lot of them, I really can relate to. Oh, I mean Tupac. I mean he's that boy was really talented. It's a shame whatever happened in the end, but I found one of his books on his poetry. And then there's a guy, he raps, but he raps in double time. I can't think of his name. I mean, I really love that. And then, of course, I have to love Jay-Z, because Jay-Z sampled my song, and Dead Presidents, Garden of Peace, and so then Mary J. and the Young Jeezy, all of them. And that, more so than Expansion, when they sample Expansion, I understand that. But when the young rappers and young kids walk up to you and say, "A Garden of Peace is a beautiful song," because that blows my mind, because A Garden of Peace doesn't have any drums, no bass. It's just I'm playing grand piano, and then I overdub the electric piano. And it's just a beautiful song, but they fell in love with it. So I said, oh, I did something, it worked.
It was Stetsasonic, and I am right in saying Talking All That Jazz was was the main one for Expansions. But I mean, you joke about it, but it's a nice fillip later on in your career to be receiving respect as well as checks from a new generation who are appreciating you.
Oh yeah, because that helps, because I guess I was just real fortunate, real blessed, because I learned about the business the hard way, as most people do. Because what really kind of chilled me out or cool, you take away all the, because at first you be saying, oh, they're robbing me, they're taking advantage of me. But then when you start talking to people in other businesses, business is business. So he said, oh, everybody got problems, and everybody's will take advantage of you, if you're not aware. So then I said, okay, so I'm taking it too personal. So it was, and when they started sampling the song, and then Mary J. Blige's song, Take Me As I Am, and she sampled The Garden of Peace, and I mean, it was a monster hit. I think she won a Grammy and everything, and and then when you receive the first check, and you can pay off a whole lot of things, you be saying, this business can be beautiful.
So that's one way of working with the younger generation. You've recently you did a Brownswood session with Giles here. When you work with new people now, do you still get the same kind of excitement and feeling of improvisation with music and styles that you're not aware of, perhaps before you go into it?
Yeah, man. Okay, so a few years ago, Giles said, you wanted me to do something called the Baller Room. I said, what's the Baller Room? And he said, man, millions of people watch it. And I said, okay. So and he hooked me up with Swindle. Now I don't know who Swindle is, but he said Swindle is the new up and coming. And so I said, well, Swindle, what can we do? So I sent him a couple of songs. He said, okay, I'll arrange them, in this particular genre, and you just play. So we go to the Ballroom at Giles's place, out in the backyard, and it worked. I met the Entourage, the young lady that sang tonight. She was there. That's when I first met her, and she was doing a lot of things with Swindle. And I met them all maybe for about an hour. So I said, okay, this is what we do. Oh, okay. And then we went on and filmed it and recorded it. And the next day I had to go to Manchester. They picked us up and they said, oh man, I saw you on the Ballroom. It was beautiful. I said, what? They didn't know, but it worked. So And we had a lot of fun.
You know, the maddest thing that day was that I had Lonnie Liston, Smith and Swindle in the back garden in Finsbury Park. And it was a beautiful day, like a Tuesday afternoon or something. And there was these people, all of the neighbours were like looking out the windows, and it was like they were listening. They had Lonnie Liston Smith on a Tuesday afternoon playing. It was like a trip for them. I'll never forget that. That was so cool. Yeah.
Well, talking about that session, and you mentioned Terry, who's over there. Tell us a little bit about the band that we've got coming up tonight.
Yeah, so basically today is a little bit of a celebration of the fact that Expansions, the album, which is this one here. They're all brilliant sleeves, by the way. I don't know if you can see it very well, but they're all real conceptual things. And apparently this record, Lonnie says to me that you've got the original artwork at home for this, right?
I got the original artwork to Expansions, Astral Traveler, Vision of a New World, and Renaissance. And let me see, let me show you something. This is fantastic. But on the original, there's something else on it, and RCA was just too nervous and no, we cannot use that. I mean, it was nothing negative, but it was just, but there's something else right here. And it's beautiful, but so I have the original. So I'm talking to Giles, so maybe we're gonna find Sotheby's or something.
Yeah, I'll buy that. I'm having that all the way if it's a reasonable price. No, that's. But anyway, so Expansions 40 years ago tomorrow, the 7th of April, 1975 came out. So it's 40 years ago that record came out, which is incredible. It is the Love Supreme of. It's actually, I think I didn't mean to coin this right now, but I think it's the Love Supreme. It's the Love Supreme of the jazz funk generation. I think it's as important a song.
Yeah, I like that.
As Love Supreme. And so for the show today, we're celebrating that particular song and that particular album, and we've got a band that features your guitarist Samir, who's here, who's come over, and we've added a few really great young. We've gone for the jazz messengers type of philosophy here by bringing in some young British players. There's a really great scene happening in the UK at the moment, and we've got a brilliant drummer called Moses Boyd who worked with Zara McFarlane, one of my singers in the last couple of years, 22 years old drummer, and we got couple of other musicians. We've got a great, I didn't even know, this is people that were introduced to me by Moses the last couple of weeks. We've got a girl called Nubia, who is incredible, who's going to be playing flutes and saxophone. And we've got, who else have we got? We got my MC actually. So I'm meant to be doing something at this gig, but what my job is basically putting out the odd records and going wicked and going to rehearsal yesterday. But we've got sound effects and stuff. So my MC and my sounds man is going to be doing stuff. Rob Gallagher, he's here and going to be doing stuff. And we had to get someone to play the triangle, right? Because the triangle is the critical bit. And we were getting ready for this band, and we were like, oh my God, we haven't thought about the triangle. So luckily for us, we've got the best triangleist in the lands who's going to be here, who's called Bowie Gallagher, who's brilliant. So yeah, I think that's the band, and we've got a killer bass player as well. So it's basically going to be a sort of extended version of Expansions, touching different rhythms and a few of your classics.
That's the band up there laughing, I think.
Oh yeah, Terry. Oh yeah. You've had a shout already tonight. Terry Walker, Swindles, who we met. You met through Swindle.
That's when I first met Terry when we did Boiler Room.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Who's got some really good films on her phone tonight. But that's another story.
Just one more record that you've got in there, Giles, while you're being the props man, is it's a case of mistaken identity. How often do you, while Giles is flicking through that, are you tired of this Dr. Lonnie Smith thing?
Oh my.
Not the same person.
Ladies and gentlemen, golly, boy, that's a trip. I mean, it's enough that I have to deal with the business and everything. But it's just, I don't know. It's a young man. He's an organist, and his name is Lonnie Smith. And so that's just the way it is. But at least they say he's Dr. Lonnie Smith, and he has a turban and a long beard. So at least I guess those that can see, you can see the difference. But
Have you ever turned up at a gig where they were expecting him to turn up? They were like, "Where's the turban?" Have you had that?
no, but a lot of people always sending me email. Oh man, I went to see Dr. Lonnie Smith, and I thought, they thought I was gonna be there, and so that's always been happening lately. But
There's no tales of a guy in a turban turning up and taking your checks away from the post office. None of those.
no,
none of those Garden of Peace.
Oh no,
checks.
you know what? That's one good thing about direct deposit. So.
And are you as curious about music as ever? And what are you listening to? What are you listening to yourself at the moment? What's on the stereo in the car or at home?
Well, I watch a lot of YouTube because YouTube is fantastic so far as you can go back and check out musicians that maybe you've missed, and they're on YouTube videos now. But a lot of time I listen, I love listening to Train and Wayne Shorter, Joe Henderson, Lee Morgan. I mean, I listen to a lot of that, but when I go back home, I gotta really check out something because Giles and Samir told me about this new young artist, Kendrick Lamar. So I don't know. They've got me very curious because they're really praising him. He has a #1 record, and they say he's a very intelligent rapper. So I don't know. At least I gotta check it out and see. I don't know.
And what's next for you? Are you going to be touring, playing any gigs recently coming up that we can see, or are you just going to go back and compose some new music?
Yeah, but right now, because I've been talking to Giles, I'm maybe going through a transitional period because people don't realize, when traveling now, the overhead is just so expensive, planes and different things like that. And then, I guess years ago, I would just jump on a plane 16, 18 hours to Japan, without even thinking about it. So now, you having thoughts. You say, wow, where did that come from? So maybe, I don't know. I'm in a transition period, whether to just really slow down or, I don't know. So I have to figure that out for myself.
Okay, well, no pressure from us here. Thank you for being here with us today, and I think it's time to give you a bit of a break and prepare you and the rest of the band for the show coming up. So we have a round of applause, please, for Lonnie Liston Smith.
Thank you.
And not forgetting Giles Peterson, of course. We're going to take a 10-minute break. And then we'll be back for the performance of Expansions and more.